She is the founder of Pay Your Family First, a company dedicated to empowering children and families to build prosperous futures through financial literacy education. With innovative, thoughtful, and easy to understand programs and products, such as the Thrive Time for Teens, board game, and youth entrepreneurial programs, Pay Your Family First teaches the practical skills that will give this new generation the self-assurance to become masters instead of slaves to their money. Sharon served as a member of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy, a national spokesperson for the National CPA's Financial Commission on Financial Literacy, and an instructor for the Thunderbird School of Global Management Project Emeritus. She's also a member of the Nation's Board of Child Health, Women's President's Organization, Empower Her, and for more information I want you to visit www.sharonlechter.com. It doesn't get any easier than that. And then payyourfamilyfirst.com. It's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. You got me all emotional. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Ladies and a couple of brave gents, I think. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'd like to tell you just a little bit more about really who I am, because that's kind of a long bio. It just tells you that I'm pretty old. I've done a lot of things in my life. But I really started my career as a CPA, and I came from a very lower middle class home. My mother had a high school diploma. My dad had a third grade education. Went into the career Navy and ended up running the engineering school for the Navy, so I'm very proud of him. But their goal and their dream was that their daughters would get college education. So when I graduated from college, they realized that dream, because I was the youngest of two girls. So I started my career, and I was trying to follow what they wanted me to do, climbing the corporate ladder. And at the ripe old age of 26, you remember when you're 26, you know everything, right? I decided that why should I be working so hard for everybody else? And that's really when the entrepreneurial bug hit me, and I started building my own companies. And I made the worst business decision of my life. I went off to a company in Gunnick, New Hampshire, and it was like totally embarrassing, because I realized that I made a colossal business mistake. But I also met the love of my life, and we've just celebrated 32 years of life. So, wow. 30 years of marriage and life. And almost all of them have been happy. So, and I even say that when he's in the room. So he may disagree with how many we're happy at. But we've had an incredible life together, and we have 3 great children and 3 fantastic grandchildren. And I now can tell you, honestly, the only reason you have children is so that you can have grandchildren. It is the gift. How many grandmothers in the room? Let me see. All right, good. Yes, I think you all will probably agree with that statement. But as our children got older, they didn't like to read. And so I met the inventor of the first talking book, and after having started a women's magazine in Wisconsin. And those are the books with the sound strips down the side. And it was 1987, and they didn't exist. Bookstores were very quiet places with little old ladies behind a cash register. And they said, we don't want, get out of here. We don't want anything making noise in our bookstores. We want our quiet little bookstores. So I kind of consider myself as having had the very first disruptive technology. So we grew this industry, and in 1991, we sold the company, and we relocated to Arizona. So I've lived in Arizona since for 21 years. And our oldest son graduated from high school and went to ASU in September of '92. And in December of '92, he came home and said, Mom, Dad, I need your help. I'm $2,500 in credit card debt. So we were pretty upset. I was more angry with myself than at him, but I was still pretty mad at him. And we wouldn't bail him out. It took him 7 years to get out of credit card debt and 7 years to repair his credit. And now he works as hard as I do and tirelessly in helping others with their businesses and coaching them in their finances and helping them get their businesses to the next level. So I'm exceptionally proud. And he has been given me 2 grandsons, so it's very exciting. But that was in 1992. So 20 years ago, I dedicated my career to financial education, financial literacy. And I concentrate on women in finance, young people, families in finance, and entrepreneurship. And I'm very passionate passionate about the fact that we need to teach our kids about money. And unfortunately, we still don't do that. And so we are not preparing them. And this is the first generation that will end up being worse off than their parents. First generation in history. And shame on us, because that's what's happening. And we're not preparing our kids for the world that they face. So I'm very much an advocate, screaming at the top of my lungs. But that was in 1992, and so fast forward, I met my husband. My husband called me one day as I'm driving down Lincoln Avenue, and he says, "Sharon, I met a guy today that has what you've been looking for." Well, ladies, what would you do if your husband called you and said, "I met a man who has what you've been looking for"? And I still remember that exact moment. I'm going, "Okay, honey, tell me more." And so I went to the first beta test of the cash flow game, and it was drawn out on a piece of paper. Any of you ever heard of the cash flow game? Okay. Wow, great, okay. And I was the only one that got out of the rat race. It was drawn on a piece of paper. The plain pieces were different caliber bullets, so really, really good first impression. And Robert Kiyosaki had gone to see my husband to help get patents on the game, and that's how we met. So because of my background on electronic books and electronic games, I started helping him and just kind of giving him free advice. I'm really good at giving people free advice, whether they want it or not. But and then he wanted some support in getting the game done, which I did, and then we decided to become partners on Rich Dad Poor Dad. Now, Rich Dad Poor Dad was written and released in April of '97. How many of you have read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Wow. A few of you not? You're not? Okay. Well, it's still a good book. But we released that, and we wrote it as a version for the board game. Most people don't know that. It was written as a $15 promotional tool to sell a $200 board game. And we never expected it to be its own product. And so the world basically told us, no, your brand is not cash flow. Your brand is Rich Dad. So it started a 10-year journey where we built the organization together. We wrote 15 books together, lots of audio tapes and games, and we were truly blessed with success. And it's not really because of us. It was because it was the right message at the right time. I always, when people come up and talk to me about it, I always ask them, how did you hear about Rich Dad Poor Dad? And they'll say, my mother, my father, my friend. I mean, it truly was a true testament in viral marketing before social media. So we were really blessed. We went all over the world, 108 countries, 51 languages, and over close to 30 million Rich Dad books have been sold. And so that was really a blessing. And we were at the top of our game in 2007. But I was no longer aligned with my partner. We were no longer on the same page. He wanted to sell businesses. I still wanted to do cost-affordable products. And we just decided that this was probably not good for me, and to stay in an environment that I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with the franchise model he wanted to do. I didn't feel it was a good deal for the franchisee. So we decided to go our separate ways. Those of you that are familiar with the papers know that it wasn't as easy as just deciding to go our separate ways. We had a pretty difficult year. But sometimes you have to stand for the truth. And sometimes when one door closes, another door opens. Just like a phone call I got from my husband when I met Robert, well, I got another phone call. But it was one night when I was having a good old-fashioned pity party. Have any of you ever had?
I was talking about that. What am I saying?
Yes. And I got a phone call. It was actually a Friday evening. And I go and I caller ID says White House. And I'm going, oh, how nice. Somebody's sending me flowers. So you know, there's a florist in town called the White House, right? And no, it was the other White House. And honestly, in 2007, it really did show up as White House on my caller ID. I'm not sure if it does that anymore, but at that point it did. And I had started my own company, Pay Your Family First, and it was a call from President Bush asking me to join the first President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy. And I have this picture because, I mean, of all of us, 18 of us that were asked to be on this, I'm the only one that was an entrepreneur. I'm the only one that was a small business owner. And so I had to become a very big mouth, which I did, and I still am. Next to me on the right, the blonde guy, that's Ask Charles Schwab. And then Mary Shapiro here is now the head of the SEC. So there's lots of people that are part of government agencies, but I was honored and humbled to be asked. And then that was another call. So every time you answer the phone, remember it may change your life. So a few months later, I got a call from the Napoleon Hill Foundation, which I'll tell you about. But as we started the President's Advisory Council, something else happened at the end of 2007. Just remember, our economy tanked. Household debt exceeded GDP. The only other time in history that happened was 1929. You think we should have had a clue? We needed to do something. So that started, of course, the roller coaster that we've all been on for the last few years. And it really generated a panic. And for those of you that are familiar with 1929, the history books, entrepreneurship is what got us out of the Great Depression. And women going to work basically helped us get out of the Great Depression. And so at that time was the release of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Many successful businesses today attribute their success to having read Think and Grow Rich. How many of you have read Think and Grow Rich? Fabulous. How many of you have not? Okay, I highly recommend you get Think and Grow Rich because it really is the foundational work of success. Let me tell you why. Because we go, I have books I want you to buy, but Think and Grow Rich was Andrew Carnegie was the richest man in the world in 1908. And he believed there was a formula to success. And so he charged a very young Napoleon Hill he said, I'm going to introduce you to all my rich friends around the globe. And I want you to go interview them because I believe there is a formula for success. And so for